Hello, everybody. This is
Morning.
June 12th and an open meeting for the Berlin Historical Commission.
Make that July 12th.
July, what did I say? June?
June.
Oh boy. Today's going to be a good one, I can tell. July 12th at just about 11 o'clock, 11 a.m. This is an open meeting of the Berlin Historical Commission with all 5 members present. And I believe today is Barry's birthday.
No way.
I believe that's true.
Happy birthday.
I was thinking of a better way to spend it, but here we are.
Happy birthday. What better way is there to spend it than with us, Barry?
Alive and vertical is pretty good.
Yeah.
Happy birthday.
Thank you.
Here's Dan.
And Dan is coming in. Good morning, sir.
Hey, good morning, everyone.
You are subject to being recorded.
That's absolutely fine. And I hope no one minds. I'm having a catch-up day without a lot of meetings. So I'm dressed casually.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Me too.
It's also quite warm up here.
Yes.
Isn't it?
Same
It's,
is true here.
It's in the 80s, I think, already.
Mm.
So
And humid.
and humid.
All right. And it seems like you have corrected your Zoom stress.
Yes, it wasn't our fault because we were on channel 2 last week and we didn't have they had not given us the correct password. So there was nothing we could do because we kept using what we thought had been the password. So.
Okay. Well, all's well that ends well, right?
Well, thank you for your patience.
Oh,
Yes.
just my pleasure. No worries whatsoever. So I'm assuming that today we just want to pick off a bit where we left off last time, but even more so talk through whatever reactions, comments, and thoughts you've all had. And I know that the decision as to where accessible parking in an accessible route is going to be located to access Bullard is still up in the air. Barry, I know you had an idea about the opposite corner of the front of the property, sort of closer to the driveway going up to Old Town Hall. I did look at, after I spoke with June last week, around when we were trying to get into Zoom, I did play around a little bit on the site plan so I can share a couple of thoughts for whatever they're worth. But I would say, first, I'd love to hear from all of you based on what we discussed last time, moving forward with Tom, thoughts and ideas on the layout.
We've had a couple of meetings with different combinations of us on site. And we're working on a matrix with pros and cons of each one of the routes and stuff. And we'll when we have that ready, we'll send it up to you.
Okay.
And, that'll summarize what we've been thinking about different things. And there are advantages and disadvantages of each thing, as you well know. And
it's always a balancing act.
Yeah.
But it sounded to me, based on the memo that June sent around, that the idea that that kitchen space in the back, I think we've all embraced it being the entry hall and where people are welcomed into the building, and then from there to move through whatever exhibit. And the idea of the door being in the front versus the rear had an appeal. And that seemed to me to be universally, agreed upon with the committee. Is that correct?
The annex doorway.
Correct.
Was,
I think
there was support certainly for that. And because it gives you, it gives you a front facing entrance on Woodward Avenue, and also into that reception area in the back.
Mm-hmm.
I think Barry and I had quite a lengthy conversation just wandering around the house, wandering around the yard, and we were thinking maybe the time has come to really sit down and write down pros and cons of each of these things,
Exactly.
and then rank them.
Okay.
Because we every time somebody presents a new one, I say, "Oh, that's a really good idea." I think we need
Right.
to get tough with
Yeah.
ourselves. And
Yeah, and I was gathering that we have rather abandoned, the idea that I came up with a while back, over near where that telephone pole is, closer to the main road, to not try to work in that area with an accessible parking space. So I pulled that off of my diagram.
Yeah.
Is that making sense to everyone?
Yes.
So maybe I could share for just a moment my screen, because I think it might help you with your pros and cons analysis.
Okay, just a second. I'll get you
Sure.
set up for that. Okay, you should be able to do it now, I think.
All right, tell me if you're seeing my page again.
Yep.
yes.
Yep.
Okay, so I know this is a little bit of a messy diagram, but I'm going to start over near our number one. Remember, the number one officially was about creating this accessible pathway right in the front of Bullard House and wrapping around to that annex door. And I still think that works. It appears to me to work quite nicely with the grading. And I like the idea that, you stay in the front of the house and that it can be rather innocuous. It's just, it's not going to be a hugely visible dramatic change. It's really just about creating a pathway and using the grades to our advantage. I created a block of an accessible parking space with the appropriate loading zone. If we're only building one, we should make it a van accessible space. That just means that the access zone, next to your vehicle, depending upon whether you decide to do it right or left, needs to be at least 8 feet wide. So it's, just a couple of feet wider than, your typical car accessible parking space. I just wanted you to see the reality of, if I were to squeeze that in next to the driveway, directly off of Woodward, next to the driveway for Old Town Hall, you'd need a retaining wall, which I'm showing in a dark gray, in order to keep the accessible parking space at no more than a 2% slope in any direction. It has to be relatively flat. You see that's almost touching the side of Bullard House in order to get that to fit and wedged between the driveway. I know at one point, there had been a discussion of, having that come in at an angle here. And I really didn't care for that because it was just so close to the door. And even this one, that I'm showing, I feel is pretty tight. Is it doable? Yeah, it looks like you could squeeze it in there. But if you like the idea of a sidewalk, which I think makes sense to create a walkable village, or a pedestrian friendly village, then, this to me is starting to dramatically, detract from the side of the house. I also looked at the reality of going up above, an Old Town Hall, and gray is representing what actually is there today based on the survey from Ross. But then in the orangey peach color below, I'm showing like a bare bone minimum of what you would need to actually be able to have, 4 or 5 parking spaces and maneuver out of them. And as you can see, and I threw on just for a reference, and if I'm coming out of the second from the left parking space, I don't have much room to back up before I'm along a guardrail or my bumper's going over the edge of a guardrail a little bit in order to be able to turn and come down. Now, there's different ways to set up the parking here. If you came nose in this direction, then the issue is you're always backing up a vehicle by the stair and the entranceway that you've created for Old Town Hall. So that doesn't, to me, seem really very friendly. So I just want to make sure that everyone has, I know that the additional grading up here and the guardrail and the eventual, ramp to come down was never built. But if we do want that to be the preferred solution, which better serves Old Town Hall and at the same time allows for a connection to Bullard. I just want to be realistic that I think we're taking, a wedge of some shape and size in order to get it to work. There's no point in spending the money and then having a really substandard, parking area. What I recall, and you all can correct me if I'm wrong, from the last time I parked there, which was, I think, not the last time we met on the site, but the one before that, people just sort of pull up and, drive in over near where the new garage is. And then, you don't have more than one or two cars up there. You just sort of work around it to get out. Is that about how it works?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if this is helpful as you're looking at your analysis, but I just tried in a really quick and sketchy way to put some realistic references on here.
The plan for that parking lot that we had with the town hall job put the retaining wall, including the ramp coming down to the Bullard house, about 15 feet from the back of the house.
Yeah, right, exactly.
So it would be even more than what your space there is. And
Barry, thank you for pointing that out, because I put a dimension on here. I'm leaving roughly 45 feet when in fact it should be 5 or 6 feet more than that. But
at least,
I've been in instances where we've necked it down a little bit in order to get it to work. In a really tight site.
Well, certainly we have that.
Yeah, correct. And part of it could be that you slightly angle the parking spaces in such a way that they, because you've got this little wedge in the corner, if this first parking space, started off a little bit at an angle, it'd be a little tougher to get into it. But once you're in it, and I'm exaggerating it, it'd be a little easier to get out of it. It could also be that a strategy is that I had the accessible entryway sort of right in the middle. Perhaps that moves far to the left, and you never have a vehicle in spot number one. You have a loading zone, and then the first vehicle space is over a little bit, so you don't need quite as much room to maneuver to get out. But anyways, I'll shut up. I was just trying to be helpful here.
Sure.
It's very helpful to me to see that, especially that space near the driveway.
Yeah. So that was one of the reasons why I was favoring that. And you all know better than I, the parking spaces that are nose into the church across Woodward, I see as sort of free-for-all spaces. I know they're used by the church. Whose property are they officially on? Is it town property?
They're treated as town property.
Okay, so that's why
they pushed into they certainly took up the whole road taking.
Right.
They're right up on the church's property line.
Yeah.
The other thing about those is they're not level.
No, I think of them as actually pitching down towards the church a little bit.
They pitch down considerably.
Yeah.
And I don't know that they'll meet criteria for to claim them as accessible spaces.
Well, keep in mind, we only need to look at the number of spaces in total, and then the accessible spaces are a ratio to that. I would imagine that if you created 2 accessible spaces, you've actually gone above and beyond what would be required, because I don't think there's that many along there. But it's a bit of a policy decision.
There are a lot there, but they're on the public street. They're not on the property of the Bullard house or the town hall even.
No, but the way accessible parking works, when you have a parking lot, so to speak, I believe it's
I know
number of spaces in total, and then that determines your proportion to accessible. But I still think, no matter what, that that first yellow crosswalk area that I created here, the orange sidewalk, it makes sense to start thinking about, you know, a much better pedestrian experience in front of both Old Town Hall and Bullard House, you know, at least going past the Bullard House. And think about what really is the optimal in terms of parking. You know, at some point in time, that upper lot over by Old Town Hall probably wants to get improved just so that it's more useful. But whether it does or doesn't, you know, involve a route to Bullard House is something you all have to grapple with. You know, I'd also say that if you did create that accessible route, you know, over by where my number 2 is, then, you know, that rear door to the annex certainly becomes more meaningful, because very quickly you could get from an accessible parking space into a welcoming part of the building.
One of the other questions that came up regarding the purple path and then the sidewalk. Now, what is the orange? That's kind of where the sidewalk.
Janet,
Okay.
orange was meant to be just a you know, along the street sidewalk.
Right. And so there was a little concern that by the time you have the orange sidewalk and the purple sidewalk, you've cut away most of the front yard. And there would have to probably be a retaining wall there too, because it's such a steep front yard. And so that was something that we were wondering about.
Yeah. So my feeling on that was as follows, that, you know, you all can decide. The sidewalk that's created could be really a lovely environment. I mean, it could be brick, it could be a paver, doesn't have to be just asphalt or concrete, right? It's a New England village. So I think it could be a beautiful material. I did imagine that the gray line in the front was a very low stone wall that started out extremely low over by 1 and grew a little bit taller as it came closer to Central. I intentionally had pushed the purple back, knowing that I might plant along the edge of that wall with things like seasonal grasses, some ground cover, to really give it that richness of green. So you're almost obscuring the walkway behind it, which, mind you, only needs to be 3 feet wide in order to be an official accessible route. And that accessible route may be able to meander around the cherry tree and then come up to the door. I just simplified it in my diagram, but that needs to be looked at from a grading perspective. My feeling is accessibility is important, and we can't change the town sidewalk in order to make this happen. So, you know, the purple is a viable approach, because you're starting at a grade over here of around 70. It's about 74, 70. It changes. It goes all over the place. And you're trying to get up to, you know, 77-ish over quite a distance. It seemed to me quite doable at, you know, 3 or 4% pitch without having to make ramps. And it's
would there have to be a retaining wall somehow between the purple and the building to deal with the fact that, or you're not cutting down then? What you're saying is that you can follow the contour of the land and still stay within the.
Well, that was.
You will have to have a retaining wall on the part over near the 1. Definitely.
Yeah, I think that there's going to be some areas where you'll either do some grading and create a little bit of a recessed area that you might screen with plantings and, you know, have some drainage there. It also could stay relatively level, and right at the last leg, we actually create a ramp. But it's not, you know, front and center. Listen, this is, it's a viable approach. It's part of why originally my green path for number 2 was what I proposed, because it was relatively screened, and I was going to be doing regrading and retaining in parts that were a little bit less visible. But if, as you all know, it's a trade-off.
Mhm.
It really is.
But the way you described the purple one, it sounds like it's an integral part of some very nice landscaping as
Well,
opposed
that was
to
my intention.
a second sidewalk. Yeah.
Yeah. And you know, if it went somehow around the cherry tree, that's another opportunity if you want to do, you know, another little stone wall, and then you plant it in such a way that looks very New England. It feels doable. I don't know if any of you know Trinitarian Church in Concord.
Yes.
But it's on Walden Street. It's the beautiful Congregational church that I worked at years and years and years ago. But if you're on Walden Street and you look at the church, we built a beautiful granite wall. And it's, I'm going to say in the front, it's probably about 3-4 feet, maybe a little bit more than that as you go down, as the grade lowers. Behind that wall is the sloped walkway. You don't even know it's there. Now, you see that from much further away. It's a very different scale building than Bullard House is, but I'd like to think that something equally as sensitive could be done here. And we do, if we're going to have the building open to the public, you know, we have to deal with this accessibility issue.
I like number one.
I see the value,
but
I think I see the value in each one, and that's what makes it hard. But right. I think there's, I don't know that it would be less money, but I think there's less change that we'd have to do with number one. I was leaning toward number one, and then after chatting with others, I was saying, boy, that one on the hill might work. But I guess each time number one comes up, if the grading business really would work without having to invest a huge amount of money in tall retaining walls and things like that, I guess I would go for number one.
Well, we still want to make our little chart, and I think we should. Yeah. I think we should make it fairly soon, because we're kind of on overload as far as our time spent on accessibility, and we really need to get this together.
Mm-hmm. Right, and my goal here is, you know, we're diagramming at this point. I'd like to take what is our preferred solution and then be able to start working with Ross on the details. Mm-hmm. You know, we need their help on this. And, you know, ultimately they'll be the saying, you know, whether something does or doesn't work, although I'm going to want to push the envelope on our preferred solution and figure out ways to make it happen. One thing that's really key is to understand exactly where the bottom of our wood is and where our foundation stone is in the front of the building if we work with one, because if we're not lifting the building and putting it on a new foundation, but working with what's there, that's one of our parameters. You know, we need to respect what's happening at the front of the building. Now, this diagram shows, you know, the steps, and they're not even, you know, we'll never make this into an accessible door. But, you know, is there an opportunity where there's just a beautiful flat stone in front of the door, and we're allowed to play with the grading a little bit because we've still got some exposed foundation? And it's been a while since I've looked at it. You all know it better than I do.
I don't see why that couldn't be done.
There are some.
What are you talking about? Raising the lawn in front of the foundation?
Just a little bit if we need to.
Oh.
You know, I can call up a picture quickly and we just go on the Google Earth for a minute.
I have a feeling that the blue pathway is going to be lower than it currently is, than that space currently is when it crosses the walk from the street into the front door.
Mm-hmm.
That's still going to be below the current level of the lawn. And I don't think you're going to get up to the level of the lawn until you get way over near the corner. But that'll work out. That'll work out if we proceed this one.
Let's think about that for a second, because if I'm going to do a screenshot actually, so bear with me a second. Feel free to keep talking while I'm doing this. Remind me, the annex is roughly at the exact same height as the front door.
Relatively.
Right. I mean, an inch or two, right?
Well, it says 77.7 for the sill there. At the annex door.
77.7 in the corner.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
okay.
and it's roughly 76 point. It's like 77.1 and 76, and change at the front door.
Well, the 76, I'm not sure what it is. I don't know whether it's the top step or the door sill.
Yeah, and that's something that I've been wanting to, get a little bit better information on.
And I don't know whether, when it says sill up in the corner by the annex, I don't know whether that's the door sill or the sill of the building. So,
bear with me a second. I'm going to stop sharing so I can do something on my screen easily. Feel free to keep on talking while I'm doing this.
If we go with the back parking lot plan, that plan was already worked out because it was the specs and stuff were, the design stuff was done for the ramp and all as part of the town hall plan.
Right.
And June, isn't that plan in the Dropbox or not?
Yeah, it's a compressed zip drive in the Dropbox. All the Austin.
Oh, the whole Austin plan is there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can pull it up. I think I might have it on my computer.
One of the second or third page, I think, is that parking lot.
I've been trying to locate these Ross plans that were done for the town hall project at the
building inspector.
At the encouragement, of Evie and Pat Smith, because they really feel it details drainage issues.
I think.
I can't seem to, I don't know where they are, but I can't seem to locate them in the building inspector's office. And I didn't get to go there this morning, which was my only other opportunity to have them help me. But,
there's another week next week.
Yeah, well, I'm just thinking that if we had asked them to include the upper portion where the parking area would be or is, but not completed, then we would already have that information and it would be updated. And they may have some of that. It's just not on our survey worksheet from May this year.
The other thing I was thinking when you were talking about that parking lot is if that were to get paved and so forth, would that actually maybe increase the runoff that we struggle with?
Well, Kristen's
Could,
recommendation was to treat the drainage comprehensively, but I have not gotten much feedback from her, and I don't know where that's going. I mean, we can't ignore it, but we need some cooperation here.
the fact
So-
that the present parking lot area is not paved means that it's still not qualified
Accessible.
as
Mhm.
accessible.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So that's one of the reasons that we've got them really pushed to pave it, is because as of right now, it doesn't even serve the town hall properly.
Yeah, and that's a great point, Barry, because if you remember when I was still involved in that, before the construction started with Austin, I had said that the accessible parking space in the access area had to at least be paved. The rest of it could be stone dust, but where you actually placed the vehicle and had somebody, exit and enter their vehicle, it needed to be hard.
Right.
There are versions of hard pack, material that can meet the requirement. It has like recycled asphalt in and all sorts of things. It has to be rolled out and maintained, but I don't think that what's up there is meeting that criteria
No.
No,
at
it's
all.
not.
So I hope I tried to share an image and I'm hope it's working. I just took a quick Google Earth screenshot and I'm showing you where, this purple concept that we were talking about. So if you see on the right side, I'm just matching up to the sidewalk that's in front of Old Town Hall. And very crudely, I'm turning the corner, along a curb as I had suggested. The gray, which I'm going to actually change to white. I think it might be easier to see. The white is my idea of a retaining wall. And as I said, that stone wall would start off at next to nothing where you enter our walkway because you do it at grade, and then it would grow in height as you continue down the street. Now, it doesn't need to hug the sidewalk tightly its whole distance. If we wanted to have some space where it goes back, but my gut says that we should maximize the lawn in front of Bullard House and keep it tight, which is why I showed it that way in my plan. But that's, something for discussion. But the idea being that if you zoom in, and I know this is a grainy photograph, but I'll highlight it here. You've got this condition with the foundation now that is not necessarily even, and I'm going to make that white as well in the front of the house. But there's some exposed foundation that changes a little bit and you get to the left side of the doorway. Does that look accurate?
No,
I think that
really
there's a
at the
trim.
right side of the doorway.
Yeah, I think the trim on the left side is lower than the right side.
No, it starts on the right side, just to the right of the door.
Here.
See how it drops? Yeah, it drops down there.
I hear you. So you're saying that this line is really over here. Good clarification. It's something like that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well,
So
that's why the house was built at two different times, and that's the
Right.
line there between the two parts.
and what we need to do is and I'm going to make that a big fat red line. We need to get over here. So the idea is that we would put a break in whatever wall we create because we want the appearance of an entry path that goes to that door, right? I'd make that path at whatever height we have to make it at because the key is to be getting our accessible route here, which is going to climb. I'm going to exaggerate it. Is going to climb to get us to that point of the door that's off to the side, which is not in our view, but we know it's there, right? We know that there's a doorway right there in the building. So I know it's not a huge lawn, and that's where, to me, you use native and New England type plantings that you expect to see in front of an old house, you know, whether it be some hosta or some lilies, you know, and you get it so that you essentially screen that back walkway to the extent that you can. But we still need to have it visible down in this corner because that's where we're going to enter it, you know, to get in there. So does that give a bit of a better visual as to what we're talking about?
Yeah.
I have no problem lifting the yard in front of Bullard House a little bit as it comes towards the street, especially knowing that what I'm trying to do is improve your drainage. So we're going to be doing the site work out there no matter what, in order to put some pipes in and get some water away from Bullard House. And frankly, being able to conceal a couple of things, you know, in the face of a stone wall, you know, and have a little gravel strip or something between a stone wall and the sidewalk makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, if anything that helps with drainage, we're all for it.
Yeah, and you know, given that the use of Bullard is turning to something more formal, and it's, you know, a rather diminutive, you know, structure when compared to the big old town hall next to it, I don't mind doing things with the site and a wall and walkways that ground it a little bit and that give it a bit of prominence as well. I don't think that's a bad thing.
Mm-hmm.
No, that's a good thing.
So I don't know. I thought that might be useful.
Yes, it's very useful.
Can I switch gears to ask the question whether you had a chance to review the scope from Tom and that we should really get him going on details and engineering for the foundation?
Yes, on July 3rd, we met, and the first thing we dealt with was that PSO from Tom Lamb based on the contract visit.
Okay.
And we identified a couple of things that I bulleted in my comments that I sent out to everybody. Does everybody have that?
Yeah, I did, and I apologize, June. I read it at the time. I don't remember what they are now. Do you want me to call up your notes and just put them on the screen for everyone?
Yeah, if it's not too much trouble. It's
not too much trouble at all. You'll just bear with me a second. It's easier if I close and open. Okay. Okay, attached document.
Lucy has been lost and I got to get her back in here.
Yeah, I saw that.
I didn't realize it had happened. Should be coming back to us.
Okay, if I did this right, you should in a moment see.
Yep, there it is.
Notes popping up.
Yeah. I just ordered it the same way as it was presented in the PSO. Under structural design, the front wall would be repointed and rehabilitated, but not, you know, we wouldn't be
covering it up with concrete.
Right, inside or outside. Is that right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay. Sorry. And then, so I was trying to establish our collective understanding. And then there would be new interior concrete walls and sloping slabs at the sides and rear of our actual cellar. And then a concrete slab with sumps and trenches. And are those all considered to be interior? I mean, I know the slab would be interior, but the trenches, we are wondering if we need French drains outside.
Yeah, so my answer to that, June, and not that I've designed this system and, you know, we need to really work with our civil engineer. I take your last bullet and your note in blue, and I combine them, I think we're going to come up with a comprehensive drainage plan that's happening both inside and outside of the foundation wall. I think we know that the type of wall that exists on the front is going to allow some water to leach in, and we want to give it a pathway when it does, as well as any other water that's underneath the, the basement floor, and it's going to be tied to something on the exterior as well. So I have assumed that we are going to be doing perimeter drainage around Bullard House fairly comprehensively. I feel like we got one shot to do this right, and yep. I'd rather have you folks do a bit of belt and suspenders in terms of managing water, especially given that we are at the bottom of a fairly sizable hill up above us.
Yes.
So I think there are a lot of things going on. So I give a strong yes to your question underneath that third bullet, and I believe it works in concert with what's going on in the interior.
Okay, and then the next issue is something that we keep talking about, and that is the problem with the side lawn that was backfilled improperly. Does the remediation for that come first before other drainage?
To me, it's all part and parcel the same.
It's just part of the same.
Well, the thing that this does is this is really the source of most of the water that goes in the cellar, maybe all of it.
Right.
And if we had a surface, the surface there, sloped all the way to the street without an area that produces a little a pond, it might well solve most of the issue of water in the cellar entirely.
Yeah, and Barry, to that point, if we're grading a bit in the front because of our accessibility, we might just force the issue and create a little bit of a low spot well outside the perimeter of the foundation, put a drain in, and bring it down to discharge at a low spot. Yeah, so we might just handle it both with grading and with some sort of a structured solution as well. Sounds like somebody's got a clock that I'm hearing little bits and pieces of.
Yeah, sorry about that.
No, you don't need to apologize. Hey, full disclosure, I got all these contractors working outside, and we're taking care of a friend's dog because she's had some surgery. So at any point in time, somebody could walk into the house to use the bathroom, and two dogs are going to start barking right behind me.
So we all have possibilities for extra noise.
Exactly. It's all good. It's all good.
And then and then the last thing under structural design was we understand that all the mechanical equipment has to be removed, and then
put back if we decide to keep the existing heating system.
Yeah. We're thinking some about not doing that, but having heat pumps instead. And that's another whole investigation, and would require the building to be well insulated.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to throw in, I want to throw in one other thing at this point. And that is, we had talked and planned at one time to see about putting in a bulkhead on the west end of the house. And because the access to the basement is very difficult. When the new furnace was put in and the current new oil tank was put in, they just barely got them in there by moving the cellar stairs out and this, that, and the other thing. And even taking that stuff out of the house, it would be awfully good to have the bulkhead. If we've got to remove the oil tank anyway as part of this foundation job, maybe we ought to revisit the idea of the bulkhead, because that'll be a way to get that stuff out of there, whether it comes back or not. And it'll have to be, if the oil tank does come back, it'll have to be in a different position. That's all.
So this this is an important thought here, because a bulkhead on the west side of the house could complicate how we're doing our accessibility. Right?
Oh, that's correct. It would, if we were trying to do number one.
Correct. Correct. Although I have to wonder, and Barry, you're going to know the answer to this. If we look at this zone that exists here today that's already elevated, I'm going to make it bright orange for a second. If we look at that zone, how's that constructed?
I don't have your current file showing.
Oh, yep. I'm sorry. You know what? I have to stop share and share again my screen. Okay, so I just drew a very light blue bullet towards the west side of the house, and I created an orange square, which I'm going to put a heavy black line around for a second, or a red line around. Barry, how is that elevated area outside the annex door constructed?
It's stones. It's a stone platform. It's rough, very rough.
Do we know what's underneath it?
Nope.
I'm just wondering if we don't kill two birds with one stone, in that we actually reconstruct that elevated area, put it back so that it looks very similar, the same, but we actually turn it into a little bit of a bunker that actually gives us that access we want. And above it is the but it doesn't get us to the right side of the basement, does it?
No, the basement is only under the front room, and so the very that platform doesn't even quite come to where the back of the basement is on that end of the house.
Okay, so we know there's basement over here.
Yeah.
How far does it go across the front room?
Yeah.
And then it stops somewhere.
No, it is probably not as deep as that at the west end.
That's fine. I can adjust.
And on the right end, part of it in the right end goes back further. Yeah.
Okay, just a second.
No, leave it. Where it says John and Johnson.
Yeah.
There's a piece of it that goes back in that area. And then at the right front, it actually comes considerably further forward. So it's just a narrow place where the cellar stairs are. There you go. Yeah. There you go. That's a rough shot.
Everyone, Barry, I don't think Lucy wants to rejoin.
Oh, Lucy's out. I tried to get her in at one point.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if you can, but
I can. I tried to get her in once already. So
she said she's raised her hand, but if we can't see, if she's not
that's all right.
You may not see all of that while we're screen sharing sometimes too.
Yeah. Yep, she's coming in now.
She has a question about variances, which I'm not sure we have to worry about, but.
Okay, she should be back in at this point.
Okay. But we don't see her.
Well, that's
I'm
because
here.
we don't. That's because we
There
we don't have everybody there because we're screen sharing. We don't have the space for everybody there.
Lucy, do you want to ask your question before we go any further?
Yeah, sorry about that. My computer decided that it needed to do an update.
No, don't you hate that?
You know, and I was listening. I just couldn't get back in.
No worries.
But my question with all of this, you know, the foundation and, you know, being not the foundation, but the level of the lawn being changed and putting in a retaining wall in the front. Yeah. Would that require some kind of variance from the town to go ahead and do that?
I think that's the least of our problems.
Well, I know, but it's still something we have to consider because it will slow us down if we have to wait for a town meeting for that.
I can't imagine it would be a variance. I think that we need to better understand exactly where the roadway right-of-way is.
Okay.
And, that's town property, and the town certainly has the ability to make changes within the right-of-way for, accessibility, sidewalk, etc. I think where we're creating our accessible walkway behind it is largely on our site. There's one little wedge right here that, and I'll just make yellow for a minute. There's that one little wedge outside of our property line, but we're still the town, right?
Yes.
We're creating access to the town property. So I can't imagine it would be a variance or a special permit.
No.
But you all know those politics better than I. I think that's but Lucy, it's still think it's a good question to ask our representative at the town level with a selectman. I can't think of his name at the moment.
Scott.
Once we have our preferred approach here.
Well, and you go to the building inspector to see what his ruling is on it.
Yeah,
because that's where this all starts. The dotted blue line,
yes,
that comes across is the road taking, and then it turns in at the steps at the front of the Bullet House at the street. It turns and goes up, and again, it's still the dotted blue line. That's the so that tells you where the difference from the road to the
okay. Yeah, I'm trying to see, your property line comes up here, and I thought it stopped at this corner right there. So that says that part of the lawn in this one wedge, and I'll do a better job with this wedge. Okay, and we'll make it bright pink. The bright pink wedge is officially within the right of way.
Yeah.
Which means the edge of your cherry tree is too, potentially. With that answer. So
now,
but
the property line is a little different because the property line changed a long time ago. And it goes through the 7 in the course marking. Is the actual property line going back?
It goes through the 7 here.
Yeah, no, to the left of it. I think.
Oh, I see it. 70.641.
Yeah. No. That I think it's actually at the next one over to the right.
Okay, hold it. I'm gonna.
Because that was that skinny thing that was sold by a previous owner many years ago.
Okay, so you tell me left, right.
Left. Keep going. Right there. No, you just went by there.
Okay. So that is somehow,
I don't know. Maybe I can't be positive from this drawing.
Does this have something to do with this line here?
Well, the light blue thing is the easement that we have for that's where the septic system is, the leach field is.
Yeah.
And it is a good deal of it is on the neighbor's property. We have an easement for that.
Yeah.
I've got to compare that with the property map again. Make sure I know what.
Anyways, so Lucy, I think you raised a great point that we should make sure that we know the answer to. I'd like to think that most of what we're doing, or all of what we're doing, is for the town benefit on town property, and that we can look at it as one whole. But if this little wedge with the road, if this little pink wedge ended up being part of some long-range plan to change the intersection, which I can't imagine it would, I think that helps us determine that our accessible walkway wants to stay away from that little piece.
Yeah.
You know, and then we just work around it. Which we might otherwise be doing anyways, because we may want to save the cherry tree if we can.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So
depending on how much we have to excavate for that, the cherry tree may be destroyed anyway.
could be.
I don't even know how old it is.
No, I don't either. It is,
May come
first
down
of
in the
all,
wind someday.
it's a crab apple.
Oh, it's a crab apple. It's not a cherry.
That's right.
Oh, well, forget it.
It is.
It's an old tree, guys. It's not a young tree, I don't think. So I'm
No,
not
it's not.
suggesting we cut
And
it
it
down.
does- It
We
does
keep that in
come out.
mind.
It does come out in quite lovely blossoms in the spring.
Yeah,
Yeah, it is pretty.
we can plant a new one too. I mean, you know,
However, the color clashes with the color of the house.
oh,
Oh, no. We'll have to plant a white one next time. White
All right. So I'm
blossoms.
So,
sharing this.
Yeah.
Are you back to seeing
Yeah.
June?
Yeah.
Yes.
Memo.
Yeah.
So the other piece was the construction administration. And I think our only question was, will we need a clerk of the works?
So I think that's something you all need to determine at the town level. And it's probably based on size of contract, you know, and complexity of project. As it gets chunked down into little pieces of work, you may not. It may suffice, you know, while you're doing the foundation, for instance, it may suffice that you just have site visits from Tom, who's doing a field report and documenting the construction progress and decisions made. That is sufficient.
Because
we
he
had thought that might be, but the
It's all-
contract talks about maybe only one site visit.
right, and the
Does
rest,
talk about
rest
supervision,
offsite.
but the question is whether he
But that's,
could supervise it without more site visits.
yeah,
That would be
I believe that's because his small work order is really for design and
Yeah,
working with the
that's right.
contractor on pricing. It's not a construction phase services yet.
right.
Joan, do you remember at the May 15th, the May meeting, when Kristen was there, that she had mentioned something about clerk of the works, but she'd mentioned something as an alternate? And I can't remember exactly what she said. I was hoping you kind of remember. I don't have those meeting minutes right now.
I think she advocated for a clerk of the works,
Yeah.
but there was no specific, I don't think it can be any of us.
No, she had said something about she would be doing, or she could do some of that.
Yeah.
I don't recall I don't have the meeting minutes in front of me.
Yeah, that might not be in
But
the
anyways,
minutes.
we'll look at it.
Have we shown Kristen this document yet? Not this one that we've got now, but the one that the contract
The
suggestion.
PSO, no, because
Oh.
we haven't accepted, we haven't
Okay.
passed judge, well, I mean, we're doing it now.
Well, we may want to show it to her and discuss that very point with her on it.
can I ask a quick question of Dan? I know we're out of time, so we can't get into discussion of it, but I'm just very curious. I had volunteered to help out with this grant, this
Yes.
Historical Commission grant. And I need to probably have some questions answered, one or two questions. And I don't know if it's appropriate for us to directly contact you by email with those questions or.
Yeah, well, Janet, I believe if you and I talk offline about that, that's not a violation of open meeting law, because that's you and I just coordinating something and then you go back and communicate with the committee.
All right. That's all I needed to know. We don't need to do
Right?
that. Yeah.
Am I correct about that? I mean, it's the same way I used to operate
Yes.
with the HDC. There could be a one-on-one discussion for a particular topic, and then it's your responsibility, Janet, to just go back and communicate whatever decisions or, you know, came out of that with your whole committee at, you know, either via email or, you know, in a meeting. You all can't debate something via
Right.
email, but you
Right.
could certainly pass information along.
That's
Yeah.
correct.
Right.
Yeah. Okay, good. We'll do
so,
that.
And I, certainly do not want to be holding up any effort to raise funds and apply for grants, but we say we have to make some decisions so we can start putting together some collateral that supports a grant application and has that it's defendable, and it's it's giving you what you need to put parameters around what our ask is, right? We certainly know what money you're investing in this study effort with us and with Tom, and then to bring Tom on board for this next piece. But we should show what our construction cost is, and at this point, I'm feeling like we should have an estimate if we wanted to do heat pump. What does that cost, right? Because we know we're going to be pulling out the conditioning to the building. If we're going to put something back in, we should know what the cost and the reality of that is. And I think we got to get a site plan from Ross showing what we're proposing to do on the site, and I think it needs to be worked through in a comprehensive way with what Tom's doing on foundation, what we think should happen relative to drainage, both inside and outside of the building. And we should start, putting this project all together. And then, maybe the eye candy piece of it, if you will, is that we do design in a bit more detail the space inside the building and what the building looks like from the outside, which is not going to be dramatically different from what it is, but I think it'll be, a little bit finessed, and have those pretty pictures, because it's all part of the vision. So
and how does that proceed? How does all of that proceed? Just a step at a time? And
it's a step at a time, but this is why, to me, mission critical is let's get Tom moving and let's make a decision as to how do we want accessibility to work so that we can really start in earnest working with Ross on developing that plan. And then, with those things resolved, with your comfort level, I think we really start working through what does the building look and feel like from an architectural point of view. And not that we're going to do complete design at the moment, but we at least can conceptually develop some collateral that help to sell it when we're asking for money, whether that be at the town level or with various grants. So I think it's time for rubber to hit the road. I think we've done a lot of investigation, a lot of sketching and diagramming to help us understand where decisions need to be made, and I'm eager for you folks to work through what you need in order to release Tom, or to go back to Tom and ask him questions or whatever, or modify it, and put together your notes on pros and cons of the accessibility. And then maybe that's when we need to pull in one or two other people at the town level to tell them what our preferences are before we knock on Ross's door to help us design it.
Okay.
To me, those would be the next best steps, and to keep going. And Janet, I'm happy, fire me off an email and you and I will find a time for a phone call or
we may even
video.
we may even decide that this is too premature to know what we want to grant. But that's something that you can probably advise on better. So that was good. We can
my feeling right now is that the need could be expressed in a narrative, but we don't have the collateral yet to back up the financial ask.
That's right.
Right. And to me, it's not just the finances, it's also the schedule and what our steps are.
Yeah.
So I'm, I don't want to put pressure on anyone, but like I said, I think it's time for rubber to hit the road and to make some decisions so that we can help you move this forward to that next level.
Yeah. And the one other little thing is that we've been given money generously from CPA. We haven't spent it because we were having some of it saved for matching grant. So I almost think at some point soon, before we ask for more money through CPA or anybody else, that we need to spend a little perhaps so that they know we're not just hoarding it. So that's just
we actually have spent money. for the master planning.
Right.
And for the Title V and for Ross already.
Right.
And
yeah.
So.
Yeah. And I had suggested early on, you may want to start doing a little bit of marketing, publicly. You may want to, on a Bullard House website or however, social media or, constant contact or whatever, you may just want to start doing a monthly, here's an update on Bullard, and start listing things that have gotten done and, thanking people, CPA and taxpayers, in that this is coming together and it's, here's our next step. It's never a bad idea. At some point in time, we're going to be going back to a town meeting and saying we need X. It'd be great if it's not the first time people are hearing about it.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we've got two efforts going. One is Lucy's working on the commission's website, which is on the town website, and with more information about Bullard as well as other things in our business. And secondly, we have the Historical Society has a brand new website, which I believe is up now. And
yes.
That too is it has some Bullard House on it, but there's going to be more expanded there. And we've had a couple of blog things that Janet's done that have related to working toward this, that it was about moving stuff out and all that kind of thing.
I think that's awesome.
We've set that in motion. We need to keep it up and bring it up to date right now.
And Barry, to that point, the simplest things can be great marketing. A photograph literally of, Janet carrying something out of Bullard House because you're going to catalog it and store it. No, I'm really serious. And it could also just be a photograph of everyone meeting there, or pointed to something while you're on the site with the structural engineer. Think of the book that Evie put together for 19 Carter, right? It just gets everyone's juices going, and it starts the setup for, at some point in time, we may have a beautiful, nice color 3D rendering of what it looks like out in front with a stone wall and a walkway and so it maybe somebody who you all know in town as a student, marketing can start, a little Instagram post. It could also just be a picture of an object, did you know, and just get some, community pride going, because that's part of the mission of Bullard. So
that's something that I'm going to be working on, because what I'm doing is working on the town website, but there's also a section where you can email people, and that's the thing that I would
really cool.
That I want to do. And that's something that I have to learn about and take a little bit of time to get that going and get some emails ready to send out. But that's definitely one of the things that I'm working on.
I wanted to just let everybody know that I was the representative for the commission yesterday at a water sample test that Bill Brookings took at 3 Linden Street. And so hopefully that sample is okay. But
now, did he take that in their kitchen?
No, we did not go to the kitchen.
Where did he take the sample?
From the filtration.
Oh, before the filter?
Well, we were in the cellar, and I certainly was officially there, but I can't tell you whether he took it before
Well, he must have, because that's why you would have been in the cellar.
Right.
He could have taken it upstairs for the filtered water. So that was my curiosity, was whether he was going to take that before the filter, which I'm glad I suspect that's what he did do.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, good. Thanks for explaining that, because I had trouble getting us in there, but we made it finally.
Excellent.
So what's the ramification of the results of that test?
It's part of the
Hey,
Title
folks,
V
I'm going to sign
certification.
off and go grab some lunch, if that's all right.
Yeah. Thank you, Dan. Thanks
so
very
much.
much.
Thank you.
I need to sign off too. Can we sign off at this point? I'm going to sign off, but
before we do that, right now we meet tomorrow.
Yes, my suggestion was to meet in the town offices parking area about 9:20
Mhm.
so that we could carpool to West Boylston.
Okay.
If that's acceptable to everyone, then that's the plan for tomorrow morning. And this afternoon, if anyone is interested, Al Smith is going to look at some artifacts at 2 o'clock.
I'm interested.
Well, we'll be in the curatorial. Are we going to be curatorial or bullet?
Well, I think we need more room, so
we'll
maybe
do it at bullet.
we need to be in the Memorial Hall, maybe.
Tomorrow.
No,
Well,
today.
Today, I meant, yeah, this afternoon. I'm signing off, June. I'll see
Okay.
you in a bit.
Bye. Bye, Janet.
tomorrow morning.
Bye-bye, everybody.
Yep. Okay. So are we done with the meeting then?
Yeah, there was no other agenda item.
Okay. I move that we adjourn.
Second the
Second.
motion.
Okay, all
All
those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, unanimously approved. Thank you, everybody.